We're going to talk about, is 2024 finally the year that blockchain and Web3 games are going to break through? So that's a panel session. So I would like to invite to the stage Bobby Kunta from Yoda Labs, who's the moderator, and I'll leave it to Bobby to introduce the panelists.
What's going on, PGC? Big weekend for gaming. Yes, it's not even weekend anymore. It's been a long one. I'm going to let the panelists here introduce themselves. We've got a great crew: Kathleen, Michael, James, and Peter. I think they might be miking up still. So the question they gave us here is 2024 finally the year blockchain and Web3 games break through? I think what you're going to see here is we're going to address kind of the underlying problem of that, really, which is what is the reluctance of publishers and developers to really integrate blockchain into gaming? Maybe what are the social elements and the reluctance to for broader acceptance? And so do a quick run here, give everybody 30 seconds. I'm Bobby Kunta from Yoda Labs. We do content and media for Web3 games that are trying to get in front of broader audiences and traditional gamers. I'll let our panel introduce themselves here. Michael?
Thanks, Bobby. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Sanders. I'm a co-founder at Sequence. We're an all-in-one development platform for integrating Web3 into games and helping our partners grow their games, grow their user bases, and unlock new monetization models.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and I'm leading Autoverse Studios, and we're making an auto racing game for Web3 with the team that built #1 auto games in the past. Started with this crew back in the day at Sea Games making Cartown on Facebook, and you may have played Racing Rivals on mobile. So really excited to be here and also build the future auto enthusiast experience.
Hi, my name is Kathleen. I am the Partner Success Manager at Immutable. So Immutable is the home of Web3 gaming. We've essentially built a platform with 2 blockchains and a whole suite of products, services that streamline the entire Web3 experience, so then game developers like yourselves can just easily focus on the game.
I'm James Seaman. I'm a 36-year veteran of the gaming industry. I see some older people in the audience, so hello. But we are building a Web3, Web2 hybrid game. It's based on an action role-play game that we built last year. It'll be coming out this June 1st. I am the founder of that game. It's called Swords of Blood, and it's being built on Telos chain.
So we know who's up here, who's out in the audience. Are there, like, can we do like just a quick old school? I know there's maybe only like a dozen of you guys here, but I'm going to require a little active participation. We're going to do like an old school, like, who's the loudest gives, lets us know who you are. So we,
Excellent.
So my first one was just like, who are the gamers? That was probably the answer right there. Everybody's just going to clap. You all play games, right? Who are the publishers? Are there publishers? Marketers? The publishers just raise their hand. The marketers scream. Couple of claps in the back. Cool. Investors? No investors out here. That was a big indie pitch earlier. I think this is the 3rd year that we've addressed this similar question here at PGC. Like, is this the year that blockchain gaming is going to break through? And you might be surprised by the answer, the general sentiment from the panel here, to probably say something like, no, not really, but this decade is kind of going to be like the focus of the talk here. So to that, we're going to address kind of the underlying question, which is like, why is that the case? You know, there are developers, there are publishers who are slow to adopt this technology, and then there's also just the sentiment in the public around this. So like, where gamers, just traditional gamers, are slow to want to adopt this. So that's going to be the heart of the discussion here, and with that, we'll just start with the general question, like, why? Why is blockchain gaming having a problem gaining traction? Just a general answer before we dive into that behind-the-scenes publisher element, and then the behind-the-scenes developer side, and then the public side. So that'll be the way we address this. So why? I mean, just general. Let's go down the line here, guys.
I think a lot of games are adopting Web3 at the moment. I'd say there's hundreds, if not thousands, of games that are integrating Web3. And of course, there are tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands more that still need to be convinced or that will enter the ecosystem at a later stage. I think a big reason is that games take a while to build, and there are a lot of great games in development, and content is really king when it comes to driving adoption. So when we start seeing great games come out, such as the games you guys are working on, we'll see players having an enjoyable experience, and they'll start to understand the benefits of Web3, even if the game doesn't explicitly advertise Web3 as the value proposition of the game. But, attributes such as ownership and tradability and other rewards and incentives, players, I think, will come to demand those things from the next generation of games that they play. And, we're already seeing, like, whether it's indies or AAAs who are building games right now that are enhanced by Web3. And a lot of them are just, some will come out this year, and I think we will see some breakout successes that will, get this flywheel going. Mm-hmm. And then others are just, a lot of AAA games, for example, take 4 or 5 years to develop. Indie games can take 3 years, obviously some are quicker, but it's just, I think we're on the path, and we're going to start to see some breakout successes in the not too distant future.
Yeah, on that's key. For us, we've been developing since 2022, and so we're launching this year. It's going to take some time to really bake in the right player experience to bring on and Web2 gamers and really bring them into the fold. And so we're really excited about having the opportunity to work with the community and all the the positive ethos of Web3 versus all the negative sentiment that's out there. And so it's going to take time to kind of shift that conversation.
Yeah, just going off of Michael's points, as you mentioned, there's a lot of games that are coming in the Web3, even though there may not be any household names at the moment. A lot of what I do at Immutable is like, I'm the data nerd. I need to look at the specific stats. So in the last bull market, we had roughly about like 800 games launching in Web3, 2021. The year before that was only 80, and the year before that was 40. So last year, 2023, at the depths of the bear market, we still had 220 games launching on Web3. So coming towards this year, you see Bitcoin's pumping prices, bull market's back. So I do think in the context of Web3 that this year it will be a breakthrough. But in the grand scheme of things, on consumer adoption, mass adoption, we're talking about, are gamers really going to play Web3? I remain a little bit more hesitant because the UX is a little clunky, but there's a lot of developers that are innovating in this space, like Fortnite, for example. We have a lot of games that are trying to innovate and build a Web3 version of Fortnite. If you think about the value proposition here, is like Epic announced the creator engagement payout model, where depending on your UA and UE metrics, you can get up to 40% of the revenue from the platform. But that's a black box. How does the calculation get done? Now, insert Web3, where you have the opportunity to see all of these on-chain loyalty payouts and everything's transparent, is that not a game changer for creators? And with creators comes users. So there is a strong value proposition on why Web3, but we're still figuring out the how, and we're figuring out the user experience process to make sure that the conversion drop-offs is not that high.
And us building the game we're building, it's a free-to-play game that has made close to $20 million right now, so we do have a lot of data. And a lot of the people playing our game really wanted more community-based ownership and things like that. So we looked at that and we said, well, let's move this game to Web3 so all of our in-game items can actually be tradable items back and forth. It is a hack and slash RPG. So for me, as an RPG developer, this is a good crowd of people to kind of bring into the marketplace, in that they'll lean into trading items and doing things more than some of the more gaming audiences will. So what we've done is we've built a Web 2, Web 3 hybrid. So people from Web 2 can just pay like they usually pay. If they don't want to get involved in Web 3, they don't have to. We create a non-custodial wallet for them. So all those in-game items they're getting that become NFTs will go into this wallet, and our tutorial will tell them, hey, if you do these things and you open up a wallet, you can trade these items back and forth with other players and get you involved in this. So we're kind of baby stepping them into it. And then on the Web3 side, we built a back end where you can come in with any chain and trade your token, and it auto bridges everything, so they never leave the game. So that whole onboarding experience for Web3 players and Web2 players becomes very simple, and hopefully in the end we can convince a lot of the Web2 guys by some of the things we're doing. Because some of the NFTs are also physical items for us. So we build figurines and we build swords. So that sword that you're playing in your game could be a small one on your desk, and it could be on your wall as a large sword. So it kind of brings these RPG guys into the NFT market without them really knowing about it, and kind of baby steps them in. That's how we're doing it.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, the question was here is just the general overview is why is blockchain gaming having the tougher time? I mean, Michael said content is king. We're generating more content. That's what we're doing at Yoda Labs, is trying to get these games in front of more Web2 gamers, traditional gamers. 3 to 5 years about is how long it really takes to develop a good game. They started developing in 2021, 2020, most blockchain games. So the numbers that Kathleen mentioned too, I mean, who knows what we're going to see this year? I know there are some awesome titles launching like this week. So that says a lot. And simple onboarding, you know, to make things like seamless and simple as possible so that it just feels like we're playing a game. We've all realized that at this point. We've repeated it over and over on these panels for years, and now it's getting integrated into games. Huge. So now what we're going to get into is the consumer-focused side of this, like where's the reluctance from the consumers and where's the reluctance from the developers and the publishers behind the scenes. All right, so let's start with the publishers behind the scenes, like with the publishers, the developers. Where do we see them having the biggest hang-ups, and how do we resolve that? More importantly, like, you know, solution-focused answers, right? Let's start on the other side of the panel with James's side.
Well, a lot of the hang-ups actually have happened. Some of the crypto winter stories like FTX happened, and a lot of the NFT stories happen. And crypto gets a really bad, you know, rep, I guess, if you really don't get involved. If you get involved and really look at what's going on in the gaming side, you would see some really positive things happening. However, for us on this side, we really got to teach these people through great games, like you're talking about games releasing right now, and our game coming out in June, and then other games coming out on Immutable, another your racing game coming out. Every win is going to be something that steps people closer and closer into Web3 and gets them to see that this is a really awesome thing. This, you can buy and have your own items, you can trade things, you can be more community based, and that's what gamers love, I think. And I feel it's going to just take some time, some quality titles. But you know, there are a lot of publishers, and I won't name some of the bigger ones that I've talked to, that would love to get into this, but are just waiting for those titles to have success so they can say, look, that has success, let's do it on our side now.
Yeah, 100% agree with the let's test things and see what brings success before moving forward mentality. I myself work with a lot of ranging studios, from enterprises to indie studios, and I think the hesitation is different. For enterprises who have a lot of users, who have successful IPs, a lot of the concern is around regulations. Also, a big part is how do we answer to the board's ROI expectations. When you're running these experiments, you're not guaranteed that you will make a good amount of money. We're also very dependent on the market. And then from some of the more innovative studio side, like working with Peter on a daily basis, we're thinking about how do we protect the consumers as well as protecting the studio. So very nitty-gritty conversation like chargebacks, like KYC. These are things that, you know, quite frankly, not the most exciting topics, but you have to figure out these nitty-gritty things in order to make a fun game as well as protect yourself.
Yeah, and for us, really, we've been playtesting the game with our past fans, and initially, they were, of course, they gave into the overall negative that, or a story that Web3 is really just spammy, it's a scam, and so that sort of put us behind the 8 ball in terms of like really announcing the fact that we're a Web3 game. But as soon as we explain how we're integrating Web3 into our game and really focusing on making a fun game first, and second, the giving value to actual players, then the tide sort of turned, and our community really is excited about how we integrate Web3 aspects of it. On the publisher side, I think there's actually a similar turning of the tide. As you see Nexon, MapleStory, they're launching, and sort of the interest in Web3 has picked up for many reasons.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you mentioned the reluctance, but there are a lot of big game studios, publishers that are leaning into Web3. I don't think I can say who yet, but we just signed a partnership with a pretty large mobile game publisher in the traditional space that's now leaning heavily into Web3. And of course, probably most people in this room know that in APAC, like all of the major studios there are leaning into Web3. And so I think the reluctance is diminishing, and I think that game studios and publishers are being very thoughtful about their approach. It's not as though right now there's just a copy and paste solution that automatically generates hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, right? So game studios, especially ones with really reputable IPs and that are well known around the world, they're not going to risk, doing an experiment that could be problematic or catastrophic, and I don't think it would be, but they're just spending their time, they're thinking through this, and this is what at Sequence we think through with them as well, and we're very much focused on helping our partners grow their player bases by empowering and rewarding their players and then unlocking new monetization models. So yeah, some reluctance with some folks, but I think it's more, I think it more has to do with just thoughtfulness.
That's great. Awesome answers. Just the quick recap on it is, what is the publisher or the developer potential reluctance in Web3 or blockchain adoptance? The answers revolve around community-based, around having the data from these experiments, making sure that profitability is clear, and that then the developers, the publishers, are looking out to the general public and saying, like, is this cool? And like Michael said, there is more and more acceptance every year. This is going to be a big year. Zooming back out, like, the question is 2024 the year? It's definitely a big one. And I think you can sense the excitement even here in San Francisco this year, where there's quite a bit of more representation from blockchain, right? Everywhere we look. So we're going to take it then out from behind the scenes there. And what then do you guys see as the remnants of the reluctance? Like, how do we push through these barriers now to get this mass adoption? Like, it's an echo chamber, Web3 gaming. I think we can all shake our heads yes to the fact that, like, we're all tweeting to each other about what's going on. How do we change that? Let you guys take it. Oh, we'll go the other way now. Back from Michael.
Yeah, so again, I think this comes down to content being king for driving adoption. It's time to market. I think a lot of these games are going to come out really soon, and it's going to be incredible. People are going to be onboarded to Web3. They're going to see the benefits. A lot of game developers who are building Web3 enhanced games are focused on targeting Web3 native gamers because they tend to have higher purchasing power. You can use on-chain analytics to leverage the insights to monitor player spend, monitor player behavior, and then modifying your game accordingly to optimize performance, to better serve players. We have like built-in analytics dashboards that allow game developers to do that. And so when games start doing that, right, they're targeting those players. At the same time, I think they also need to serve other kinds of gamers. Most games anyway, not every game necessarily, but most games are going to need to serve the players who might have less purchasing power, because you need the concept of player liquidity or player funnels, a lot of players in a game to keep it a healthy ecosystem, while you might have some Web3 whales being kind of the financial sustainability component of it. So I think if you can figure out a way to balance those audiences, there's going to be some incredible successes this year, and it's going to be a huge catalyst. But again, I think content is king, and I think the previous friction we saw around developer experience, and Kathleen alluded to this as well, just with like onboarding. I mean, Immutable is doing a great job at solving that. We're doing a great job of solving that with Sequence. Like, there's just fewer and fewer roadblocks now from a developer perspective, and there will continue to be fewer. So yeah, the future is definitely really bright.
Yeah, and especially as it's a lot easier said than done, but the focus on making a fun game first, which to all of us here, it's a duh moment. But I think as more developers and even publishers are part of this ecosystem and start focusing on that aspect of it, we'll see greater and greater adoption from players from Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, right? But that is key for us as well, to focus on the player experience. Why should players own our NFTs and own our cars, and what does that really translate to? And I think that as more of the ecosystem focuses on that, we'll see greater and greater adoption.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys have mentioned so far. Try to not repeat. Content is king. 100% agree with that. That's why influencers are getting paid so much, and I do think we should all start creating content. Also, yeah, gamer experience, super important. I'll add to that by saying I think a lot of it is also the people who is working in the space and the people who are going to be playing these games, testing it. I'm a huge believer of this new terminology called culture market fit. So instead of the product market fit, where you pretty much know what it takes to take a product to market, because it's such a nascent industry, a culture market fit is what I'm personally looking for when I make my investments or when when I evaluate games, in the sense that you could be wrong, but people who are within your team, who are high achievers, can all admit and have a candid conversation of how do we iterate? What is the retro analysis once you launch this game and if it's a flop? This is one of the best things that I enjoy about working at Immutable is we have a tight team culture where every single time we launch something, new product, new game, we do this analysis of what can we do better next time. And constructive criticism is always encouraged within the company, the industry. And I think it takes a lot of these tougher conversations to acknowledge that, hey, we did a great job, but we could do better next time. That's what's going to continue pushing the wheel forward.
I can't agree more with what you said, Michael, as far as content is king. And as a Web 2 developer, what really hurt us a year and a half ago was not having a lot of great options to actually convert our game into Web 3. So companies like yourself, Immutable, and our company, we're working with a company called Altura and Sphere One. They've given us the ability to take a core Web 2 game and really make our vision happen. And that couldn't have happened. It would have taken us years to program these things, but services like you provide right now have given us, from the Web 2 side, the ability to really go to market faster now with this idea of this great hybrid game being created. And as more games like our game and your game, Peter, come out, I think it's going to be easier and easier and easier, and there'll be more companies providing quality services to all these game developers, and that's what it's going to take, I think. It really is something that I think is going to be one win after another win after another win, and you'll start seeing that people really believe in this whole thing, because quite frankly, owning your own items in a game and being able to trade them is cool. I mean, having that ability, like we were talking about in our call, can you imagine back in the day, if you owned the first Chun-Li from Street Fighter, you own that as an NFT, 1,000 of them, how much that would be worth today? So as a trader and a collector like myself, as an RPG player, this is an easier story to tell these players. We're giving you something. We're giving you actual value for the game you are buying into. And that's something that does not exist right now.
Yeah, yeah, give it a round of applause. That was great answers from all of you guys. The question that we're getting into is, what is the public perception, the barriers to the public perception that stand in the way of mass adoption of blockchain in gaming? The balance of audience appeal Michael brought up, that's great. We need to bring in those Web3 whales. We need to bring in traditional gamers. All of this is important in bringing those different communities together. Thinking about that community. All gamers want to have a good community, so making sure that that's something that's thriving and forward, like a community forward approach. It was mentioned not product market fit, but culture market fit. I love the term community market fit, like looking to the community, to the culture of the brand and of the people who are adopting it. And seeing how that works. And we're really just starting to understand that for Web3 games. So the games are just reaching a point where the high quality games are coming out. The communities are just at a point where the gamers and the public at large is seeing what's going on. So, is 2024 the year that we break through? It's certainly a big and exciting one, and the years ahead are going to be even more exciting. I think that's the sense that we're all getting from this. Community first, iterations and improvements, right? We're just seeing this happen, that we're constantly testing and improving that Kaizen spirit from the developers and the publishers. That's all just starting to shine after a few years as well. So these tools are just getting developed to make onboarding easier. We got to turn to marketing. Everybody, I think, just said content is king. Yodalabs.io, this is where we're trying to step in, is to bring this to broader audiences at large, where we can help as a growth partner to get streamers from Web 2 that are playing these games now. And that's it. So this is all really exciting. You could tell, I think you could sense my genuine enthusiasm here. We've got like 15 minutes left. I want to pull it back out a little bit, and the question here is are we going to address all of these development and consumer-based roadblocks in 2024? Is it possible, and what would a realistic timeline look like? Because we keep asking this question every year at PGC. Let's just give it a timeline here. Maybe I'll develop an infographic afterwards we can all share. This is what our panel says. What does it look like?
I think for our genre and RPG genre, I think this is a good start this year, but I'm looking at a 2 to 3 year timeline. that we know we're going to see games really, all larger franchises taking this adoption of having in-game NFT ownership and having wallets and things of that nature. So these even monster franchises coming out. You're even seeing Microsoft right now and Xbox, in the conversations I've had with them recently, take a look at this. So you're seeing bigger companies really, leaning in. So the more successes happen this year and the following year, and you'll start seeing the dominoes fall. And I'm really looking forward to it. Being in the first games, having Immutable and Michael and Peter, all these guys, and all of us developers, it's going to be something very special for us to be kind of the pioneers, I would say, in the first AAA games that are being really built for Web3.
Yeah, I love this notion of the dominoes fall. It kind of reminds me of the tipping point, right? You're thinking about the network effects. So how many users or activity does it take on chain for you to truly say that, oh, Web3 is now mainstream? Timeline, this is difficult to predict. I think if you look at the history, right? Like last cycle, 2021, the huge topic that we're talking about is wallet onboarding experience. Nobody wants to deal with the long seed phrases that makes everything so difficult. So we fixed it. I mean, now there's email sign-ins, there's social sign-ins, completely native to the Web2 experience. I think personally this year is going to be a huge topic on on-ramping and off-ramping. So this essentially means, how do I take my credit card or my bank fiat money and translate that into cryptocurrency to buy assets? This touches upon a lot of regulations, which a lot of things is not within our control, but there's a lot of great developers that are solving this issue, and they're tackling it from a different region perspective. Like laws in APAC is different than the laws in the US, and different sentiments around it. So if I really had to make a guess, same as you, like 2-3 years maybe. But yeah, as long as we have a hit game that people likes it, it doesn't take everybody to think that the entire experience is seamless to acknowledge that Web3 gaming has its own values.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take the easy answer and +1 to both of their answers. But really the nuance of it is, I think it's going to take several years because it takes that time for games to really hit their stride. So as you're developing content and developing mechanics that are fun for players, it takes that long to actually build just a fun game. And so that would be my default answer.
Yeah, I think it'll be about 3 years before everyone in the world recognizes that Web3 gaming is inevitable. It's not that every game will leverage Web3 at that point, because we know how long it takes to build a game. But as an example, like today we announced a first of its kind partnership between Sequence and Google Cloud, and it's because Google Cloud's game developers are demanding Web3 gaming infrastructure. So they partnered with us as that preferred partner to offer all of the Google Cloud game developers Web3 gaming infrastructure. So that's a big indication of where gaming's going. It's being accepted by these massive organizations, and then in time it'll be accepted by the players. So I think in 3 years, everyone around the world will know Web3 enhanced games are inevitable, and then it's just development cycles that it'll take until, I would guess the majority of games are leveraging Web3 in some way, at least all live services games will, and that might be, 10 years before 80, 90% are using it. But that could also be accelerated by AI game development and just the exponential growth of things. So maybe it'll be even sooner before virtually all games are leveraging Web3 in some way.
Great answers again. Great crew up here. Web3 gaming is inevitable. That's it. That's the tweet. You keep seeing it everywhere, right? I love that was said on stage here. 2 to 3 years seems to be the general consensus for what we can call mass adoption. I think this decade is a good time frame to say that 80 to 90% of game type of number, if we're going to project like that. The sentiment of the answers here was, there's this network effect that we're seeing. The dominoes are falling. That's what the excitement is really about. 2 to 3 years, the issues that stand in the way, things like on-ramps, off-ramps, again, just having the right tools in place, making the user experience seamless. We just want to play games and have fun. And then there's going to be the opportunity to make money off of it. We level up our characters and we're able to sell that NFT when we quit the game. Awesome. Everybody wins and we have fun doing it. So that's where we're at right now, and everybody sees this happening. So at this point, it's just up to all of us to, I think, like it was said here, just start making content, like doing it yourself. So we've got 10 minutes here left. If there's anybody out here, I heard some people just clapping at answers. So are there any questions, any thoughts folks want to share here?
I have a quick question. I think it was for Kathleen.
Here's a mic for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. A quick question for Kathleen. The culture market fit being nascent, can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm reveals again that I'm a nerd. I read this off of, I think, Every. It's a great source where people share thought leadership articles relating to two concepts. So the way that I think about Web3 gaming, there's two things called a radical innovation versus an incremental innovation. Incremental innovation would be things like, for example, Apple releases a new iPhone every single year with a little bit better of like a camera quality, bigger screens. That's incremental. Radical information is something, for example, like the invention of Uber. You never knew that you wanted the sharing economy before Uber and Airbnb came along, but it took so much of changing people's behaviors and mentality to really form an industry. And I genuinely believe that Web3 gaming is more on the side of a radical innovation. So right now, you may not feel like you need it. You're playing your games, you're enjoying the experience, but what if true asset ownership were a thing? And for example, if you play RuneScape, right? Like you no longer have to sell your accounts on black markets. Don't sell your accounts on eBay. Now it's a free market. There's so many verified marketplaces that you can sell your avatars, your items, your skins. So much time that you've put in, it's going to be worth something. So in order to achieve that, because there's no answers on how we're going to get there, it takes a lot of conversation within the people who are building, so developers, gamers. So this is where the culture market fit comes from. A lot of that is, we don't have the answers, but let's figure it out together. And the answers that we come up with along the way may be wrong, but we're not afraid to admit that. And we're going to innovate and iterate every time. That's the thought behind it.
Anybody else out there? That was a great expansion. Oh, yeah, behind the pole. I didn't see you there.
Yeah.
This was radical.
Hello, great panel. My question is, would adoption of other technologies also help, one, the game development process and also the player experience? Other technologies, including like AI, like a possible VR Web3 game or something like that. Do you think that could help bring Web3 games up?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think UGC and Web3, there's an incredible intersection there via tokenizing the items that players or other creators create. And those could be created by generative AI, right? There's all this crazy intersection. And sometimes, I contemplate whether, I sort of don't think that Web3 gaming is going to be a category in and of itself, the same way that like free-to-play is, for example, or it's certainly not a genre. And I think I more perceive Web3 as these technologies that enable great gaming experience and reward players. And so in the future, I don't really imagine players are going to be saying oh, it's a Web3 game. I think they might talk about owning their items and trading them. But the term Web3, I think, is more for the developers and the publishers to kind of talk about in a B2B environment. But yeah, I think the intersection of all of these things, VR, AR, Gen AI, UGC, who knows, we might be at the singularity in 5 years and it's just... yeah, I mean, 2029, that was right.
Everything's a simulation.
I know, but so exponential growth, right? None of us can conceptualize it or understand it. And I mean, Ray Kurzweil predicted 2029, and he's still committed to that number, and so are other people in the AI space. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that will definitely speed things up, but again, it goes back to our players having fun and do they really enjoy the experience? Because to your point, free-to-play, the difference between a free-to-play and freemium game, that only matters to us, right? Players don't automatically say, well, you're in this bucket, I'm not going to play your game because you're free-to-play versus premium. They care about, what type of game? Is it an RPG? Is it a car racing game? Is it a shooter? Am I going to have fun with my friends? And so all those tools will help us realize that faster. But that's a key thing that I think with the onboarding of all these developers and the focus on that, we'll see really the the speeding up of the adoption.
I agree. I can remember back in the day when we used to have to actually make our own engines. So every single game we made, we actually created the engine for it. So imagine that. So no Unreal, no Unity. That's gone. Okay? So now Unity and Unreal come in, and now that cuts dev time. I was just in GDC, and I watched a guy put together 200 characters for an RPG game in less than 7 minutes. So great, all that stuff's going to help us build the games and build the environments, but like Peter said, the game has to be fun. The game has to have a reason for people to play it. So yes, all these things are going to help speed things up, but in the end, the adoption comes from a game that people want to play. So in the end, that's the true winner there. So, but I have to say, I never thought I'd see the day that we could make a game in a year and a half. I mean, we made games with for SSI for Gold Box Games, Pool of Radiance. I don't know if you remember that game way back in the day. It took us 5.5 years to develop. So we could probably make that same game right now in 2.
ChatGPT probably even shorter than that. I feel like these days, if you don't even know how to code, you can probably make a game on ChatGPT. So I love the intersection between gaming and AI. Not only does it streamline the experience for developers, but also on a player perspective, we're actually seeing that it makes the experience a little better. It solves a problem, what we call the cold start problem. If you're a MOBA game, if you're an MMORPG, you don't want to play the game where there's no one else playing. So what's the solution to that? There's a lot of AI companies now these days, if they watch, say, for example, 15 hours of real player content, the bot can mimic the emotions of a real player. So if you insert these bots into the game, then you have this native organic experience of, oh, I'm actually playing. And similar to what Fortnite does in the beginning, right? Like you play the game, everyone's bots, but it lets you win and you're like hooked on it. It's the dopamine rush in the beginning. AI allows us to do that. So once you solve the cold start problem, more people come into this space, you build a network and a community. That's when I think a lot of the gaming experience is also going to be elevated through AI.
Yeah, that was a great audience question, is, how can the confluence of other technologies really help to catalyze the growth of Web3 in gaming? So, that brought out the answer that I really wanted to hear, have the opportunity to say on the stage, which is, Web3 gaming isn't even really going to be a phrase once there is adoption. This is something we say now, and eventually people aren't really going to say that. ChatGPT and just the way that coding can be accessible to people who don't even have coding backgrounds at this point, at least especially for indie games and the kind of games that can be produced in a year and a half. I mean, that's going to be huge. So the rate of the game development will obviously increase. It was mentioned that we can tokenize different assets and even content, and to help increase the rate of UGC, user-generated content, and even game assets, like in the sandbox, right? You could build assets and sell them, and so including that tokenization and things, and of course just playability, just making this stuff more fun, like we've mentioned over and over. Oh, and AI NPCs, how cool is that, right? Like getting to know and grow with an NPC based on the way you interact with it. I mean, so these are ways that we're going to see these technologies interacting here in the future. So that was a great question from the audience. Any others? We got 2 minutes to entertain the rest of you guys. What do we got? Hit it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. One of the things we touched on there, so great panel, by the way, really interesting, thank you, and lots of B2B stuff there, but we also touched on the gamers and process there. James, I was interested, you mentioned a couple of things there about how the gamer doesn't necessarily have to engage with the Web3 elements, and you mentioned non-custodial wallets that are created and so on. So I guess my question is, what can we do to smooth a gamer's onboarding into Web3? What role do we have in kind of educating, if you like? That's maybe not the wrong word. That sounds like hard work, but making it, making games instant for gamers.
Well, for our game, for starters, we're spending a lot of time in the tutorial. So the tutorial is one of those things that it can be really burdensome for some users, but our tutorial will just tap people on the shoulder and reward people just to watch certain things on how to learn about those in-game items they have that are in this non-custodial wallet. So we want to make sure that these Web2 guys who come in, they kind of realize over time that these items, if they would open a MetaMask wallet, can now be traded back and forth with their friends and their guilds and their clans. And we also will incent the clans and guilds to talk to within themselves about what this game is really about as far as community ownership. So over time, we're hoping people will open those wallets for the benefit of themselves. But if you can build a really nice quality tutorial, and tutorials are huge, by the way, for most people don't really pay much attention to them, but we build tutorials that are like, you can opt out, but if you get stuck, you could get tapped on the shoulder and it'll say, hey. Or in our game, if there's certain things happening and we see a little bit of lull, it'll be a time when they come in and says, hey, look you got this legendary item. You could do this at this store. You could do this here with it. And then the games and the clans and the guilds talking amongst themselves as well about all this ownership. We hope that's going to be one of those things in our game as an RPG genre that's going to really kickstart these Web2 guys into knowing about the ownership value of items that they didn't have ownership for. I mean, you play games like Game of Thrones Conquest or any other free-to-play game, you own nothing. And now, if you bought something with your hard-earned money or if you earned it in-game, it rewards you as a player. And I think that's what's going to really be the catalyst in our genre.
Another great question from the audience. Where does the education come from? And we've been talking about community up here a lot, so that education can even come from the community and from the UGC. And Web3, that whole sense of community is a driving element of things. So there you see these communities creating things like tutorials and how-to videos, and that's proving pretty important. So to wrap things up here, I want to let all of our panelists here just give away that people can get in touch with them. We've got viewers at home who will be checking this out live and the recording. So how can people find you? I'm the Kunta MC on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Telegram, TheKunta MC. And
just go to sequence.xyz, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Michael Sanders.
And you can get access to our early alpha at autolegends.com, and you can reach me at peter@autolegends.com. Very creative, I know. But also on Telegram at pfamous.
Oh my god, you guys are gonna laugh
famous
at this.
with a PH.
Is it famous with the PH, Roy?
Yeah, that's important. P famous.
We love funny names, and I got one for you. So if you want to reach me, I have the same handle on Twitter as well as Telegram. It's called Staking Rewards, but instead of the traditional crypto spelling of staking, it's steak, like the piece of meat. So because this has maximum utility and I'm a carnivore, so Staking Rewards is where I'm at.
I'm at Swords of Blood on Twitter. And on Telegram, I'm at HitBox Games. And if you want to reach me via email, it's james@swordsofblood.com.
Awesome. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks, PGC. On to the next panel. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.